Hello and welcome to the Growth Vantage Podcast. My name is Garrett Vida and I am your host. I'm so excited for this podcast today. I'm super excited to talk about this topic because talking about the why and how do you structure it. Many times many podcasts, many YouTube videos, many Instagram stories and such. They always talk about the why. Why you do things. The why isn't why you do things. The deep inner motivation to do something. And it's interesting to see that they all say the same thing, but no one really dives deeper into it. I definitely agree that why is something you do something that causes you to move forward, but no one has ever really talked about what really entails it, what really encounters the structure of it. When we go into my details of various topics in today's instance is the why, we can be more intentional and we can better identify where our focus is at and where our intentions need to be now and in the future. When we lose sight of those, we are missing the full context of what we need. Because as humans, we have 100% of a pie, but we are identifying only, let's say, 10% of it. That means 90% we are missing out on. And so today, through this podcast episode, I want to shed some light on you, what you may be potentially missing in your why, to really over encompass everything that you're doing in your life as a motivation. So there are three main parts. You have the selfless, inner self, and the financial. So I'm going to first start off with the inner self. This is really who we are and who we want to become. This is our character, our values. I would also throw in our family needs, your kids. I would say I put family in the inner self because kids are an extension of who we are, quite literally. And so when we focus too much on our kids, we lose sight of the future. And so when we think about it, kids are only with us for so long. Let's say 25 years. After that, they leave. And so there has to be a constant process within ourselves to really fuel ourselves besides our family. And so it's important to have the self satisfied by ourself as well as our family. And that's why I put them together, because both of those together fuels us as a whole within the inner self. So you have your family / kids, and then you as the person of who you are become. Kids are there for the long term, and then you as a self are both there in the short term and the long term of the inner self. Financial. This one's pretty self-explanatory because we live in a fiat monetary system and we rely everything on financial reasons, going to gas, get some food, pay for college, blah, 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 retirement. And so this is important to really understand because without sight of this, we can't really satisfy our why and really feel what we need to do to really achieve our why. The last main part is the selfless. This is really this is really emphasizing on focusing on something that's greater than yourself. I would say shoot for something bigger than yourself. For some it's global warming. For some it's, really trying to build schools in, third world countries or whatever it may be. Focus on something that's greater than yourself that is actually will force you to really get out of your comfort zone. For me, personally, one of the things part of my why that is structured in this is really to redevelop the slums of the Philippines. That's one of the reasons why I got into development. And so this helps me to fuel my selfless part. One thing I do want to mention is that when you go through each of those, really think about where you're at with it and how you can improve it for the long term. Each part, in my opinion, each part should have its own emphasis of timeline. So the selfless should be in the long term. When I've noticed that once I had a long term vision for the selflessness, I noticed that it's given me a inner peace. I know it's given me more gratitude in my life, and it's helped me to really dig down deeper when times get hard. Um, for the financial, I would definitely say focuses on the short term, because if we fuel this for the long term only, then we become greedy, and we're not open to as many opportunities. When I was younger, I used to have this financial was pretty much the main reason why I did things. I want to be rich, blah blah blah. But one thing I did notice with my financial why only being for the long term was that it really made me feel greedy. It made me feel like I wanted to be competitive with others instead of being collaborative with others. Made me be selfish, maybe closed-minded to different things. It made me feel like I knew everything about everything, which in reality is definitely not the case. And then the inner self, I definitely say have a middle, short, and long term. How I characterize these is that when our main focus for the long term is selfless, it can fuel the long term both the financial and the inner self. When we focus in the future about the selfless, it really puts us into gear for both the financial and the inner self. Because when we chase something for others, we have to really be growing in our inner self as well as financial. And so that's why I put it in the long term, because it can satisfy both of those. If you can achieve the selfless, you can achieve the financial and the inner self. The reason I put the inner self in the middle vision of the short term and the long term is because you can't be selfless if you're not growing as a human being and as for your family for the long term. And you can't be no one want to be around with you in the short term if you're not growing yourself. And then financial, I put it in the short term because I noticed when I put too much emphasis on my financial why in the future, it also made me not focus enough and be more tenacious enough in the short term. And it's important to be more financially tenacious in the upfront short term, because it's going to really get your gears moving and put you on it's going to light your butt to move faster. And I've noticed that when I switched this, it's maybe be more creative and really think about how can I get things done, what are some solutions instead of thinking about problems, how can I get this done with others, and is there more efficient ways to do things. I do want to mention also that it's important to have the inner self, financial, and the selfless. But leaning too much on one of them can hurt the other two. So let's say if my why currently is too much focus on the selfless, I'm definitely neglecting my inner self as well as the financial self, because even though I have a great vision of the future, I'm so infatuated that I'm not doing what I need to do now. That makes sense. I noticed when I I had this view definitely in high school, and I'd say actually college wasn't too bad actually, but I definitely had this vision of the selfless in high school, and it was definitely skewed to it. I noticed that I always talked about my potential. I just need to graduate high school and college, I'll be good. When in reality, if I was really more tenacious in my short term financial status, I could have taken more action and I could have been doing more deals now, and started doing other things to get me off financially sooner. But since I only was skewed to weighing my selfless why too far in the future, or to focusing too much on it, it prevented me from really seeing what's in front of me at that current point in time. Same thing with this financial. If we're too focused on the financial self, we can really deter us from being greedy, from really being open to others and helping others. Because there's no point of making so much money if you're an a-hole. No one wants to be around an a-hole. Money's not going to solve that problem. So it's important to really stretch that financial self in equal amounts over time, but really be tenacious with it in the short term. And for the inner self, I can honestly say that's probably one area of your why where you can never go wrong with having a vision for it in the short term and the long term. As at every level of success, you're always going to be a different person. You're always going to have to develop different skills, and along that journey, it's always going to feel great to really see yourself change. And I think having that mindset also helps you to really allows you to open up yourself for opportunities for people to come into your life. I definitely know that really combining the inner self and the selfless has opened a lot of opportunities for me with meeting people, with opportunities that I typically shouldn't be getting. And as overall has given me such a grateful perspective on life. It's important to really, you can structure it how you want, but it's important to really balance it with the selfless, the most in that pie, inner self the second, financial the least. Play how you want it. Let me know how you think about it. And hey, thank you for listening. I'll see you guys next time.